patent. But more than that, it should be having medical sense, and you should have a clear path for certification. You have to find out where you are launching this product, whether it's North America, Europe, or whatever, and you have to find out the regulations beforehand. Before you even touch the development, you have to make sure that, look, we are going through this classification, and this is having these kind of risks. Those risks put this product into this specific classification, and analyze those classification documents, make sure that you can fulfill all these documents based on your budget, timeline, and capability domains. And then only you can start a product development. The product development is normal, regular product development. Only thing is you are considering a lot of documentation and safety consideration, testing, all these things, but it's general product development. After that, when you are launching a product, there's a lot of certification, and also when you are converting that to bulk production facility should have again different certifications, just to make sure that your design stage, your product stage, your production stage, delivery, and continuous maintenance of the production quality are aligned, so that it doesn't give wrong details or it doesn't harm a patient. Those are the main two considerations. And so those development processes, it has different set of things that you have to do. I don't want to go to each and every line item. We'll go to them briefly in next ones. But in the right side in the diagram, what you can see is that we normally come with a concept design where we are considering user needs. If it is a thermometer, the user need is to read the temperature correctly. That's the only need. And finally, at the design validation, you have to validate with multiple patients, multiple ages, multiple skin types, multiple temperatures, multiple fever levels, and multiple skin colors. That all these categorized patients' temperature is read properly. That's called validation. And to have user inputs, then you have to go to design inputs. What are the designs? What are the temperatures you have to measure? And where you have to measure all these things. And then those design inputs are used to design the product. And then those design inputs are separately verified by measurements. How much Celsius you are having in the body, how much Celsius this is read likewise. So we have a verification and validation process added to the normal design process. That's the main key difference between a normal product and medical product in the design process, where you have a separate verification and validation process to make sure in verification that your product design, electronic design, hardware, firmware, software, app, everything is verified that the intended design inputs are achieved. Validation is for the product level, to make sure that the user requirements are met at the product level, not from the hardware or software level. So those are the two things that we have to double check. And the other thing that I highlighted in the bottom left corner is that development of even a very simple medical device like a thermometer, it takes 47 years. Like if it is a class 3 device or a very new device, it might take much more than that. I have seen devices take 15 years. One of the devices that I'm building, my competitor took 12 years to come to market, which is very simple device. It takes a lot of time. So those processes, some of them you can't shrink. Some you can shrink, some it's really impossible to shrink the timeline. If you shrink the timeline, you will go with the wrong design inputs, wrong testings, and then you have to go back to formula and come back. Most of the medical products I have seen failed because they went for wrong timeline. Wrong timeline means like they thought, okay, this is a simple device, I can do it in 2 years, which means they are going with wrong inputs and wrong financial calculations. And the investments you are getting for this kind of 2-year development is not suitable for 7-year development. So when we painfully understand that the development takes 4 years more than you predicted, there's no way now the previous investors would invest on you. Or you thought that, okay, it's 2 years, so you are using your own money to pay for all these things. And when you understand that the requirement for cash is 100 times higher than what you have at hand, the product will fail. So most of, especially in Sri Lanka, not only in Sri Lanka, in most of the countries. When a startup start a product, they got a really nice idea for a medical product. They have never done a medical product before. On that kind of occasions, people judge on the timeline, costing requirement, and also K-bill requirements much lower than the actual requirement, which fails the product. It's not the idea or the usability, it's the execution that fails. That's one of the reasons I want to share these details, because developing a medical product is really, really complex, takes a lot of time, and just the documentation would take two guys full time. And then marketing will take another 2 3 guys, development will take 5 10 guys. So it's not a some simple IoT development or power board development. This is quite complex, and you have to adhere to 100% of the regulations given. I'll show you a few documents required for these regulations, which is really complex. So if you don't adhere to all these regulations 100%, you won't get the certification. So sooner or later, you have to go through all these steps, which take a lot of time and effort. So that's one key highlight. And regulation-wise, if this is from IEC, IEC is regulating almost everything in the domain, especially in hardware, firmware, software, that domains. So IEC, they have regulation for switch gears, for your normal house switches on off switches. They have regulations for power electronics. They have regulations for electric vehicles, everything. IEC 6061 classification is the major category for medical. So you have IEC 6061-1-2, -1-3, -1-6, likewise, lot of -1- items. And then 6061-2, there are I think 65 or some classifications based on specific device. So most of the devices should adhere to -1 categories. And for some, based on your product, you might have to adhere to few of -2s. So the idea is, like, for an example, -1, -2, the topmost one is the most common one. And though this is for electric equipment safety and essential performance, which makes sure that your product can work in the correct environment. If there's a lightning, if there's an electric discharge, if it is working with other complex equipment, this product should still work properly. That's the idea for -1, -2. So if your product, almost all the electronic products should adhere to -1, -2. And if it says so, you have to adhere to 100% of its requirements. If I can show you only that document, let me go to my files and look at that. Okay. So this is the set of medical standard documents you have. There's large amount of documents. Not everything is relevant to you. If you go to -1, -2, I think you can see the document, right? So this document is, I think, around 400 pages. I can go. So this document has a lot of requirements for medical electronic safety and performance. You have to go to each and every line and make sure your product adheres to these requirements. Say, if I can go to one line which is relevant, these are just summaries. So when you are testing for human hand, this is for electrostatic discharge testing. This is for artificial hand. When you are testing, when you touch a hand, touch the device, it should not electrocute you. And if your hand is charged to 20,000 volts, which happens in the other countries, not in Sri Lanka, when low humidity countries, it should not discharge to the device and burn the device. For that, the testing should be done with exactly this amount of apparatus. And you have to adhere to this table. Power, voltage, and frequencies used for the test, for that specific EST test. And likewise, you have a large amount of very specific numbers that you have to adhere into. Let me, and sometimes this refers to other documents also. So if you are having AC input and the patient coupling port, they give you a very specific way of testing that AC input and DC input, and also patient coupling input, to make sure that your discharge level or AC to ground level is within 500 microampere, if I'm not mistaken, within that level on a faulty condition, and non-faulty conditions, I think around 50 microamps. So those requirements are given in this document, and you have to make sure your design circuitry adheres to this one. And again, those documents refer to other documents. Those tests are referring to another IEC standards that you have to adhere into. So you have to go to those documents and make sure that tests are done in those requirements. Normally, you don't have to build these test devices. There are third-party devices companies who are doing those tests to you. Only thing is, your circuit design should adhere to these tests. Otherwise, the third-party companies will say, "Look, your product failed." Then you have to go back to formula, redesign it, test it yourself, and then go to the standard bodies in another 1 year or so. That's why you have to read it before you start even designing the product. And there's a lot of things to read. You can see, like, again, okay, this is a nice thing. So this is the power port transient. So you have to make sure that the power input transient 2 kilovolt is at 100 kilohertz repetition frequency is okay for your device. Even if you are supplying 2 kilovolt input at 100 kilohertz frequency, your device should not burn. Likewise, there are a lot of other things. That's okay. This is again nice thing. If your device is used in clinical environment, your electrostatic discharge voltage should be 8 kilovolt. And if it is home care environment, conductor disturbances are lower, but ESD should be same at 8 kilovolt. And air discharge should be 15 kilovolt. So your ESD diode that you are selecting should be 15 kilovolt based on this document, to know that you have read this document. So let me go to the presentation again. Likewise, this is only one document, 6061-1-2. Almost all devices should adhere to this. And we have large amount of other documents also that you have to adhere to. We'll come to that later. And this is one example. The example I took was a fetal monitoring system, where it's not an invasive device. You are just feeling the fetus in a mother's body. And the requirement is -1-2 is -1-1 is basic safety. -1-2 is what we open the document, electromagnetic compatibility. And then it should definitely have a few more, like -1-8 is for the biocompatibility, -1-9 is for household devices, and then 227 is specific for this kind of devices. And then for the software, you have to adhere to, it's not 6061, it's a 62,000 classification. This document is about software life cycles. You have to adhere to that. And usability engineering is about the color of the device, the alarms. For an example, if it is an urgent alarm, there's a specific decibel level, specific tone, and specific on time and off time that you have to send the buzzer out. So you can't simply decide on it. If it is a mobile phone alarm, there's a way that the mobile alarm should be structured. It's given in this document. And this is about electricity discharge. And for battery, you have another thing, electromagnetic compatibility. There's another set of documents. For risk management, this is a regular thing, general risk management, electrical safety, and EMC. So for software development, verification and validation, both are in the same document. Usability engineering is a different one. Likewise, we have a number of different documents that you should follow to make sure that you are even landing at the development, to write down the spec sheet of the development. Without knowing those documents, without reading all these documents, you can't write down the spec sheet even to start the development. That's why normally when you are developing a medical product, before you start the development, it will take around 1 year for studying these things and making sure that your structure, documentation, requirement analysis, that's properly done, which takes a lot of time and effort. We have a few more. So that's about, just give a second. So those are about the documents that we have to read and adhere into. By the way, you can download these documents. Only thing is, when you are filing for a new device, you have to show how
Right.
you downloaded and read the documents. And each document cost you probably $200 to $500. So you have to spend a lot of money to buy those documents and show to FDA or CE that look, these are the links that we bought from, these are the invoices. Without that, they won't accept your product certification. That's why I said like developing a product is quite expensive in medical domain. When you develop these products and and test it your own, just for the third party mandatory testing, the third parties will uh, charge you probably 50,000 to 100,000 USD just for the third party testing, and that which is a very small amount compared to the whole total cost of development. And then we can go to risk management, where one part is to make sure that you are adhering into these certifications given in a specific documentation. Other part is to analyze within yourself and finding out what are the risks about your product. Say there are a set of risks. Uh, the x-axis is the severity of the occurrence. Say for an example, if it is a say ventilator or pacemaker is the device that generates pulse for your heart to operate, because your normal oscillator doesn't work quite well, so you can put a pacemaker inside. What happens with the pacemaker's electronic fails, which is inside your body, and if the electronic fails, your heart will stop working because the heart's pulse doesn't generate anymore. The result is catastrophic, which is level 5 error, level 5 severity. And you can't have a probability of frequent for level 5 catastrophe, which is the topmost column and topmost row, which is crazy high in risk because you can't expect people to die frequently. So the probability of that should be level 1, which is given in 1 into 10,000. Extremely unlikely. And still, you have to consider additional tests because you can't even accept 1 into 10,000 pacemaker users dying every 1 hour, like some time. But green area will be acceptable. And if it is a very minor risk, say maybe if it is a tense pad, which might be irritative sometimes for some skins, which is a minor severity, it can be frequent because no one is much affected with that. So the frequency into severity is the risk that you have to analyze. And if any of your risks are in the red range, you can't get certification. But if you have 1 or 2 risks in the yellow range, you can argue, say, look, we are okay with that. Like these are the issues we might be able to improve in the future and maybe get a certification done. But if all your risks are in green level, you are totally okay. And those severity levels and occurrence levels are properly given, so you can't define them. They are properly defined in the medical domain. And then you have to do to find out those risks. There are 3 types of root cause analysis you have to do when you identify the risk: failure mode and effect analysis, failure mode defects and criticality analysis, and fault tree analysis, which are mandatory for filing with the FDA or NMRA or any those certification body. Without that, they won't. Without a proper FME analysis, they won't accept your certification application. So just to get an idea, those certification application document would be probably 15,000 pages altogether. Like the document, just engineering development documentation you would have will be 1,500, 2,000 pages, but including all the test reports, third-party reports, everything, root cause analysis, that will be 10,000 to 15,000 pages. which is huge. That's why normally it says for even a class 1 or class 2 product, you might need 2 full-time documentation guys just to fill up all these documents, do the analysis, and present that to FDA. And then if you go back to this hazard risk table, when you have red and yellow risks, you have to go to a table like this, find out what are the red and yellow risks, and then we have to find out what are the risk controls and reduce the risk level or occurrence level. Say, if it is a pacemaker, if the pacemaker electronic stops work, the patient will die. There's nothing you can do for severity. So if you go for the first line, the severity didn't change. It's still number 5. But the probability reduced from 4 to 1 because you have implemented the risk control measure. In a pacemaker, it might be 3 parallel paths. If one electronic fails, second electronic will work. If second one fails, third one will work. And if any of that fails, you will get an alarm. So there's enough time for them to go to hospital and change your pacemaker. Likewise, you can implement risk or probability reduction measures to make sure that your risk is now at the acceptable levels. So that's how we can reduce the risk level. We have to fill up this table anyway, reduce the risk level, implement that, and do the testing and show, look, it works as intended. So that's about the risk mitigation. So we have to have a risk management plan which is presentable to the FDA and all the other documentation parties, risk analysis, evaluation, control, risk management, and risk management report. And then when you put it to the market, you time to time, every year, if I'm not mistaken, every year, you have to present a report to the FDA saying, look, this is this year's report. We have sold this amount of products, and these are the number of failures we encountered. This is how our risk manage or risk risk avoidance circuitry worked, and no one died. All these reports should be presented to FDA time to time. And then if the risk level is higher than you expected, then you have to either recall your devices or do a software update or do something about that. Otherwise, FDA will say, look, you have to recall every device. So that's about documentation and risk. And then we can go for the documentation. There are 2 types of documentations. One is product development documentation, and the one is product documentation. This slide is about product development documentation, where we start from the requirement layer and then go for architecture and design layer, implementation and verification, validation layer. Those are the 4 layers in documentation. You have to present it properly to the FDA. And the right side diagram, it shows our company's way of doing the documents. You can change it a bit, but you have to present to the FDA, look, this is our policy of doing the documentations, and this is how it links together. So in our top layer, green level, it's requirements coming from the business requirement, hazard risk analysis requirement. If there's a higher risk, you have to have bypass paths. And then FDA accuracy levels given in IEC 6061, and other certification requirements. All these different document requirements come to a single document called system requirement matrix. It has all the requirements together, well numbered, one in section by section. Each line item has a number, and when the system requirement matrix is built, you can't change it. If you change it, you have to go all the way back to formula. And then you can write down the specifications for the hardware development, firmware development, software development, UI UX development, everything. So for an example, the alarms, on time, off time, decibel levels are given in UI UX requirement. And if there's a doctor's portal, then doctor's portals, individual buttons have their own specific colors that you can't change. Those colors come in UI UX requirements. And for software, again, you have to have a requirement for those alarm pulses and also all the other requirements, software versions. So when you have those requirement specifications properly listed down, for hardware, firmware, software, and UI UX teams. Those teams can work separately to build the architecture based on these requirement specifications, and then do the designs, do a design implementation, and then do design specification documents, design description documents, and then individual functional testing. Hardware guys will do hardware functional testings, software guys will do software functional testings, and then we have to integrate everything together and do a integration testing. That's the product testing. Sorry, product integration testing to make sure the whole product works. And the system integration testing links to the system requirement metrics. And then we have verification and validation testing, which should be done by a separate dedicated QA department, which cannot be altered. Like verification and validation cannot be done by the same engineers who are developing the software UI UX. That should be a separate team. And then after all these things, we have to tick everything. So if you have a specific number in system requirement metrics, you have to show where that number convert into hardware, firmware, software, and where it was converted to architecture design in that document, how it converts to design spec document, how that number converted to design description, how it was tested in the functional testing, how it was tested in the system integration testing, how it was verified and validated. So those links are given in traceability metrics, which is kind of like Excel sheet. When you have all these things together, you can put them everything in a folder and give it to FDA saying, look, this is our product development documentation for this product. That's the development documentation. And then there are product documentation, how the product requirement from the business requirements to project proposal to requirement to architecture to validation worked. For an example, if you and you one of your friends uh, met somewhere and got an idea while you are talking to a doctor, the light bulb moment came in and you have documented that. That light bulb movement where you got that idea, you have documented it. And next you are getting a meeting, maybe a phone call with your friend later that night, and you had something about that, you had documented that. And later, next week, you had 2 hours of meeting about that, you had documented. And somehow, doctor, when you went to a doctor, has some feature, when version 2 product doesn't have that feature or have additional feature, the FDA will ask, look, there are versions, version 1 had one feature, version 2 had another feature. How did you change that? Where did you get that decision? What are the basis that you got that decision? And what's the change risk analysis document based on this feature? So whenever you change any of these requirements, features, color changes, anything, you have to have change documentation. So those things are part of the product documentation. And then the different certification part is how you send it to certifications. All these things should be in the medical product documentations. Oh, the product development documentation, this one, certification, bodies testing, results and everything, those together will be that 15,000 pages document that you are presenting to the FDA. And then you have a proper way of doing a bulk production or new product introduction from very early prototyping to the engineering validation, design validation, testing, everything. So this is the process that we follow. FDA asks, look, give us the process that your engineering team, software team, hardware team follows for the product documentation, for product development, and you have to give this kind of diagram to them, which makes sure to FDA that you have followed enough procedures to make sure that you can catch any faults or errors within the development process. And then you have to think about reliability specs also. There are minimum reliability specs given in IEC, but normally the required reliability specs that you need for a product may be much higher than what is mandatory, especially based on your warranty requirement, the normal user expectation. Say if it is a very expensive device, the users won't expect that to break every 6 months or so. And sometimes products are quite complex. CT scanners, MRI scanners, they are really complex. You have thousands of individual components, and you have to make sure that bugs and failures are contained. You can't have zero bugs ever in a medical product development. When you are launching the first version, you can have a number of bugs, which should not have any safety issue for the patients beyond that green, yellow levels, or for the accuracy requirements. But you can have bugs. You have to properly mention those bugs are remaining when you are launching the version 1. And then the safety, drop testing, drop reliability, all these things. So you have to make sure that from early on, you are defining those requirements so that your design engineers can get the proper input and design accordingly. The most expensive thing to do is to just design something and then finding out that look on those IEC documents, you have these things, then you have to go back to formula and redesign this, which is really expensive in terms of cost, money, and effort. And then you have a lot of reliability testing. You can do accelerated user testing, destructive testings, misuse, vibration test, ESD, environment chamber testing, and finding out the reliability margins, which are normally mandated by FDA. After all these verification tests are done, then you can go for third-party certification to make sure that you are getting the essential certifications. Some are mandated by the regulatory body, some are mandated by the import regulations for that specific country. For an example, if it is a battery-powered device, when you are taking it in an airplane, in the turned off mode, FDA doesn't mind, but the airplanes regulate that you have to have UN 38.3. Likewise, part is for the medical, part is for the specific countries' import regulations. So there are a large amount of regulations. Again, then there's one more thing coming in. After you develop everything, there's a production documentation or production standard called ISO 13485, which is medical product manufacturing standard. In Sri Lanka, various systems has that standard for medical electronic developments. Unicella MS, Unicella in Panadal, they have medical soft good garment and soft good development manufacturing line. Those are to make sure that you are properly vetting the production process. The issue is, say for an example, if you don't have 13485, you are manufacturing a thermometer, the thermometer works really well. The first, second year's bulk manufacturing is quite good. But suddenly one of the resistors in that thermometer has wrong values, or its tolerance levels is too high. So when that batch comes out, it's giving, some of them are giving you wrong results. That's a huge issue because that's based on the patient's uh, reading accuracy, which the doctors are using to diagnose the patient. For that kind of things, the factory should make sure that raw material input is consistent and they are measuring or they are testing 100% output, and they are rigorously testing a certain percentage of the products, which is again specified by the FDA and MDR based on the risk levels, uh, uh, to make sure that the product don't have deviations like that. So you have to certify your manufacturing firm for 13485, and for class 2 and above devices, your design process, the one that we talked about, this design process, this process should be again ISO 13485 certified for design process, not for the manufacturing. So for class 2 and class 3 devices, this process should be 13485 certified. So sometimes if you are developing a complex product your own, you might not be qualified to develop it. Like in some countries, you have to be, just to wire like a house, you have to be qualified to wire that house. And if you are dual designing a building, even in Sri Lanka, a big building, you have to get the certification of a chartered engineer for that design. Likewise, for the medical design, your design process should be 13485 certified. And then when you are going for the certification, we have another thing called predicated devices versus new devices. So predicated devices means someone has already done it, the same thing. You are doing the same thing. You are in the same way. Your circuits are quite same. Your output visualization is quite same. Not 100% same, but similar, and your accuracy of the sensors is either same or better than that predicative device. So you can say, look, FDA, we have doing the same thing that other guys did. That guy went to clinics, went to patients, and properly proven that if you are achieving these accuracy levels and showing this amount of information, this is okay. It was previously proven, so give me the certification easily. That's the idea. So when it's a predicative device, FDA doesn't ask you to go back to clinics and do a clinical trial. But if it is a brand new concept, no one has ever done it, you have to go to clinics, do a clinical trial, and prove that your device does what it says it does, which may take another 2 3 years, and if it is a normal drug, it may take 15 years. So when Panadol or paracetamol is initially developed, that might have gone through a long certification process. But when a new company is building same paracetamol and under different name, brand name, you don't have to do that. If it is same paracetamol, it's same predicated device, predicated product. Same way for the hardware, firmware, devices, softwares, visualizations, everything. If it is doing the same thing, you can go through predicative path. But if you are having at least a single more feature than the predicative device, and if FDA determines this is a new feature, then they will ask, look, you can't put this one because this feature was not available in the previous product. So this is a new feature. You have to go to clinics and do a minimum of 500 patients clinical trial to prove that this works, right? In that case, you have to go to clinical trials and delay the whole process by another 2 years. So because of that, most of the times, the devices are built with the new feature, but they disable that feature and give us the version 1. And meanwhile, they go for the clinics and make sure that feature is properly certified, clinical trials are done. And that's in the version 2, they will launch that new feature. So a proper way to go, if you are doing the very first product development, is to make sure that you are going as a predicated device, make sure you are using some other person's clinical trials to your advantage, and then launch that thing, earn some money. When you have good enough money for 15 years of product development time, if you can wait for 10 to 15 years, then go for a revolutionary new product which you can dominate in the market. Then it has to go to clinical trials and everything, but no one has ever done it before. You can be the first move advantage. Uh, if you are doing it for the first time, never go for a new concept. That's my recommendation. And then you can go to certification, pre-certification, testings, everything. And that's a whole new ball game. As I mentioned, like recently we got a quotation from a Taiwan supplier for certifications, IEC certifications, and all the other CE, EMC, EMI general certifications, uh, and adherence to 6061, everything together for a TENS therapy device. TENS is high voltage therapy, that you are giving to skin for muscle vibration to relax the muscles. It's not very high, it's class 2, but not a very high safety device. But the costing for that was $105,000. That's probably 30 million rupees just for that certification. So make sure that when you are developing your product has enough cash flow for certification. And normally, when you go for that kind of certification, it doesn't guarantee that your product will pass the certification. As a result, you have to go back. Like if your EMC fails, you have to find out where you are in EMC failed. They will give a report. Okay, this frequency is the issue. Then you have to come back and analyze where that frequency is emitted, shield that path or do a re-PCB, do all these testings again, and then get back to them. So it will take another 2 3 months for you to go recertify, and you have to uh, pay them again. And the better ways to do pre-certification. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we don't have much pre-certification facilities. In our office, we have pre-certification facility. We can do almost all pre-certifications for electronics. We do that beforehand. Then when we are sure that we are okay with EMC, ESD and everything, then only we go to our certification parties to get the certification, because it's quite expensive to go to them, come back, go to them, come back likewise. In one of the cases I know, happened to one of my friends in Sri Lanka. He went 3 times to India and 2 times to China to certify the same board. Every time you go there, you find out a new issue, come back, rectify it again, take a ticket and go there, pay them for the certification laboratory spaces and do the testing. Likewise, it takes a lot of time and effort and money for certification. So sorry if I'm scaring you out of this one, but don't be scared. I personally think that this is a really good opportunity. One reason I think why this is a good opportunity is that the process is so complex and takes a lot of time, that the US European companies are not willing as such to give those kind of complex processes to Chinese suppliers. That's one of the biggest advantages we have. If they want to develop IoT product, going to China is 10 times cheaper and faster than what we can do, because China can do it really well, really fast. They are not bad in quality. So competing on IoT developments, power electronic developments with China is a crazy thing. It's really hard to do that. But medical, that's a different thing. Medical, whoever developed that, all these documentation, processes, testing, everything, it takes a lot of time, effort, and documentation, where the East Asia is not very good at. East Asia is good at execution, not in documentation. So we have a very good opportunity in Sri Lanka to develop those products to European, US customers. And even if you are developing your own product, the ability for a Chinese or third party guys to copy your product and put it to the market faster is much lower, way lower than any other product. And the pricing doesn't matter as such, bulk pricing. Like if you are manufacturing an IoT device, competing in price point against China, Taiwan, Vietnam, it's simply impossible. But in medical products, that cost structure is not a big concern anyway. So we are in a very good position in Sri Lanka to develop medical products. And I highly encourage you to go with that. But my recommendation is that you go for that kind of development with conscious mind, knowledge, and enough cash flow at hand. The issue is like you can't develop that kind of product on your own. Like it will take probably, even if it is a simple class 2 device, 20, 30 million when USD when you are putting it to the market. And I don't think any of you has $20 million at your pockets. So you have to go to investor. The issue when you go to investor is that you have to go to pre-seed, seed rounds, round 1, 2, and then launch rounds. If you go to a seed investor or pre-seed investor and tell him, look, we are going to launch this in 2 years, and we need only probably $2 million to launch this one, and gives him 20% of shares at a lower valuation, then you can't convert that, because that investor is expecting you to convert that money and give him returns in 3 years, right? Then you have given too much of equity to him because you thought that you don't need that amount of money to raise. And then you can't raise any more money in the second, third rounds because you don't have enough equity on your own. You have given large amount of equity to very early investor for very small amount of money. That's one of the biggest reasons, again, why the medical product developments fail. So go to the market with correct understanding about this cash flow requirement, certification requirement, team requirement, especially your expertise requirement, and clinical trial requirements. If you don't go with all this proper knowledge in hand, you might fail. So this is the idea about sharing this information with you, to make sure that you have that knowledge. At least you know that you have to earn this knowledge. Like you have ChatGPT and everything, so you can just type it in, and he will give you all the information required on this one. And now, normally the paid models are quite accurate now, even in FDA regulation and everything. So just go there and learn about it before you jump into spend money and time. Okay, let's go for questions, right?
Thank you, sir, for making such a complex topic so accessible for the participants. So these insights are incredibly valuable to anyone who's aiming to like bring a real life product to life. So with that, we now move on to the Q&A session. So if you have any questions for Mr. Jayasundara about FDA classifications and pathways, timelines, or compliance strategies, so please feel free to unmute or raise your hand, or simply you can drop a chat in the chat of the Zoom meeting. So we will try to get through as many as possible.
Yeah, you can type in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, until the first question comes in, you have a cheaper way to go. With the Sri Lankan NMRA, you can get the certification at much lower price. But only issue is that NMRA is only valid for Sri Lanka. So you will have to work for 5, 6 years and then launch it here only. Slowly launch it, get some clinical data, then go to FDA, which is much longer timeline than directly going to FDA. If you don't have enough contacts and resources, you can do that path at much lower cost, but at lower opportunity also. So the company value you build will be way lower than a proper international company. By the Banaka, so the guys here, they are developing some application, right? As for the contest.
Yeah. They're developing a certain device or a software as well.
Okay. So one question is, when it comes to software solution, does it take much time and cost as much as IoTs? It will be way higher than IoT development. The issue is that even with the softwares, sometimes especially if you have an AI or something, you have to regulate it. So if there's any AI, uh, you have to make sure that you are showing that your AI prediction accuracy is enough. Say for an example, if you are getting some CT scans and predicting that there's a cancer, then the issue is not even prediction accuracy, but the failure accuracy, which means you are missing accuracy, like missing percentage of the cancer is a huge issue because you can say false, like look, there might be a cancer for non-cancer patient. That's okay. But if there's a cancer and you don't detect it, that's an issue. So for all these software things where you might not detect something, you have to prove that you are within that accuracy level. So it's way higher than IoT. And all the documentations you need for that IEC requirements, accuracy requirements, and then design architecture, everything is valid for software only product also. Do you need to renew the FDA approval after certain time frame? You have to maintain that approval because FDA requires you to continuously report what you are manufacturing, your batches that you are manufacturing, where you are manufacturing, your 1345 reports, your ISO 135 is a continuous update. I think you have to update every 1 year or 2 year, audit it every year. So you have to send that audit report to FDA and keep them updated. You don't have to reapply. Only thing is IECs change time to time. Say for an example, there's a huge update coming in for IEC 6061-1-2, the document I showed you, which is very critical document. I think all the even previous devices should adhere to this new regulation within the coming years. They give like a plan, not immediately, next 5 years or something. You have to adhere to that. So the non-adhering IEC device, medical devices have to update their software, update their hardware boards, or do something to adhere to new regulations. There are any update with the regulations for NMRA? NMRA, normally what they have done before is to, as in Sri Lanka, we didn't have much of medical device developments before. Genro is doing now one of really good developments. But what NMR did was getting the FDA certified product. So if someone wants to import a CT scanner, they have to give to go to NMRA and say, look, this is the CT scanner, this is their FDA approval, this is their reports. Please give us authorization to import that. So NMR looks at FDA reports, which is already approved by FDA, CE, and everyone else, and say, look, this is okay, just let them import it. But now that uh, uh, new products are being regulated in NMRA, where they were never regulated in any other place, they are also in a big issue because they have not trained for that. So the regulations and the way that they are implementing are still changing and adjusting. Um, Unfortunately, as far as I know, there is no government support for reducing the cost. Sorry about it. I am my company is registered in Sri Lanka and Estonia. Compared to Sri Lanka, Estonia, and generally in Europe also, we have huge amount of grant schemes, consultancy, free consultancy, everything in those developed countries. But in Sri Lanka, we don't have that any of it. Even pre-certification lab is not available. Now EDB is trying to build a lab, but still it's not implemented. Um, as an investor, if, I think Rashmika's question is about biomedical designing and good investor in Sri Lanka. Previously, we didn't have any investor in Sri Lanka 10 years back, but now we even have a bit of angel investor funds. Recently, over the last year, what I have seen is people have already started coming to Sri Lanka, mainly Sri Lankans who are staying abroad and working as angel investors or VCs. They are coming to Sri Lanka regularly to invest. So if you can properly find like those contacts are easy to find when you invest your time and effort on looking at these contacts and just approach them. And especially in LinkedIn, if you looked at VCs who are born in Sri Lanka, you might be able to find them. And then there are enough investors, angel investors on those countries who are investing on that amount of money. The cash you can get from a Sri Lankan investment firm is much lower because Sri Lankan firms are valued at much lower rate. So if you are looking for Sri Lankan medical product that you are certifying with NMRA only, the valuation that you are getting is much lower. So my personal recommendation is to go to an outside investor and pitch to them. It's harder to pitch, but it will be 100 times higher in valuation and cash you can get, 10 to 100 times. Um, I the question is how can we get the NMR approval if there are no NMR regulations? There are regulations. NMR is also following IEC 6061 regulation, which is universal for the world, but the way that they are defining the process they are doing is quite different from FDA to CE to MDR, which is US to Europe to UK. The process they are following is quite different from one to another. The issue is not the regulation itself, but the process that NMRA should follow is not fixed yet. So they are also learning it. That's why it takes a bit of time and effort from your end and their end to make sure that they are properly regulating you. But the adherence is same. So if you adhere to IEC 6061 standard, that will be okay. And actually, I met those NMRI guys who are doing that. They honestly are getting an effort. The issue was that no one was applying for that before. That was not their fault. But now that people are starting to apply for very new devices without any FDA approval, just going to NMRA first, now they are trying. They are trying actually hard to set up that process. And the other thing is like compared to if other certifications, FDA is the fastest to go and cleanest. And FDA's website is one of the best sites I ever seen where the documents, the structure is well defined and you can see anything. Like it's really defined and really easy to browse. So if you are going for US certification, that's much more faster, easier, well regulated. Issue is that half of the FDA crew was fired by the new president, and they are not getting any more support from the government also. So then FDA process will be again lengthier. So for an example, for predicative device of class 2, uh, FDA has a rule that they have to give or reject application within 90 days. That was a rule. But for CE, European certification, it will be probably 1 year to 2 years, something around 1 year to 2 years. There's no fixed rule like that. Um, will a startup company have any chance to get any funding in regards to FDA? Because obviously, yes. Again, there's another issue in the recent time because of all these what you call the tariff and everything. The cost of funding has increased significantly. And normally, the way that investment work is they keep their cost cash in the stock market, and then whenever investment comes in, they sell their shares and put it in the investment for long-term cash gain. And now that stock market is down, it's really bad time to sell it off because now already it's down. So the cost of investment is quite higher. So previously, if you want to get $1 million, you are say selling 20% of the company. Now for the same 1 million, you might have to sell 30% of the company. But other than that, if you are having a good idea, if it is viable, if you follow the proper procedures for investment, do the proper investment pitch, find out correct investors, then finding out investment is nothing harder than being in any other place. Now everything is global. Where you are developing it from doesn't matter as such. And the question is again about regarding the FDA cost. The biggest cost is not in FDA. The certification cost is not the biggest cost. The development cost of a FDA product or medical product is much higher uh, because you have to. uh, uh, it's higher because you have to, in one case, adhere to IEC 6061. So FDA certification is one thing. You have to work with FDA, get the certification, but developing this product adherent to IEC 6061 and then putting it to the market, launching in the market, marketing itself, manufacturing, and finding out 13485 manufacturing plant, that's the issue. So for an example, uh, the Vario Systems, Sri Lankan company, they normally say they will take any business which is more than $500,000 bulk production. So if you don't have $500,000 bulk production, they won't even consider that. Again, as there are a few funding questions, I just want to remind you that the average pitches, that means average presentations you have to do to get a funding from an investor is one investment per 100 pitches. So it doesn't mean that like if you pitch to 10 investors and didn't get any investment, it doesn't mean that your product is bad. If you present to 200 investors and didn't get the investment, that might be an issue. So you pitching and getting investment is kind of a full-time job. So uh, if you are doing this, join with a few partners, make sure that you have enough resources for engineering development, marketing, FDA documentation, uh, everything, and business development. Not a single person can do that as such.
Okay, with that, we can conclude the Q&A session. So thank you for all those valuable questions. And once again, a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Kosala Jayasundara for delivering such a clear, insightful, and a practical session for all the participants. And FDA regulations may seem like a barrier at first. So, but as we have learned today that they are essential as a part of building safe, effective, and trusted healthcare solutions. So, to all our Brainstorm 2025 participants, we hope today's session equips you with the knowledge and confidence to move your product to your ideas closer to reality. And once again, big thank you to our sponsors, ExcelTech OU and WSO2, Hack SL, Aura Digital Labs, and Ricera, the official 3D printing partner. And don't forget to use Brainstorm 25 to get 15% off your prints for the competition. And thank you all for joining this insightful session. And we are looking forward to seeing you in the next workshop. And until then, stay inspired and keep brainstorming.
And thank you very much for the opportunity. And I just wanted to give a last word saying, don't take my lecture as negative and barrier to entry. Any business you are developing, you have to have that effort. It's just putting something into the IoT market is easier and quicker. But whenever you are building that as a business, you need this effort. So building a business based on IoT products may be the same complexity as building a medical company with a single medical product. It's just the medical product entrance is harder. You need a lot of resources, but as a business against any other business, it might be same because you need that resources, you need that effort and money and everything to build a successful business. Business wise, it might be same complexity as any other business that you are developing. You need CTO, you need CMO, you need CEO and CBO, everyone, and a big team to develop that business. It's just in the medical devices, some regulation body makes sure that you have that thing from the early on, so that you don't put the initial crappy product in the market. In IoT, you can escape it that, but in medical, you have to do it properly from the first stage onward. But it doesn't mean it's any more complex than any other business. So I fully encourage you to do this. And I'm happy if you are doing that, and let me know if someone is properly thinking about doing a really good product. I might be able to help. I'm not good in financial aid to invest on any of you, but I might be able to intellectually help you, me and my team. Okay, thank you then.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. And I hope all the participants will find it insightful in this session. And until we see you again, good night and take care.
Thank you. Good night.